Okay, let's get started for today. Before I get started, I just want to let you guys know that I do have a store. I know you're already rolling your eyes, but hear me out, hear me out, hear me out. I'm good at teaching, okay? I'm pretty good at it. So I did a master class on portraits, and it's on sale right now. It'll go even lower around the holidays. But right now it's on sale if you guys are interested in grabbing it. And also Portrait Studio, it helps you build references. It helps you do all kinds of amazing things in preparation for illustrations. And that's it. Go check out my store. Buy things. Okay. So let's talk about how to add detail to our portraits. Um, what happens when you are really good at art like this person is? What happens when you've pushed it as far as it'll go? You got everything right, you got all the values where they need to go, and now you can't reblock. You just, for the sake of continuing drawing, you want to add detail at the same level as the drawing. You're allowed to add detail at this stage, obviously, and it just depends on whether or not you want to do photorealistic detail or texture as an illusion detail. I usually like doing texture as an illusion. Photorealism is trying to get every pixel and put it there. Pixel, put it there. Grab that, put that. You're just filling your wheelbarrow and walking over and copying it and making sure not a single thing fell out of the wheelbarrow. Not a single grain of sand. Okay? But there's another type of wheelbarrow. Let me draw a wheelbarrow. Is that what a wheelbarrow looks like? Right? It's like this, right? And then you lift it and then it's got two? No, it's got like a little thing. All right. So the first wheelbarrow 1, is you're not dropping a single grain of sand. All right? That's photorealism. Texture as an illusion or painterly or impressionism is a lot of sand is coming out of the wheelbarrow while you're transferring over from point A to point B. A lot of your sand, you know what? There's not much left after you're gone. When it comes to detail, only like this isn't pertaining to detail. So there's farmer number 1 and farmer number 2. This one is a type A, this one's a type B. Not that those matter anymore, they've all been debunked, but you know what I mean. So I'm somewhere in the middle. Sometimes I feel like adding more detail than I should, and then I regret it and go back and keep some of it. And sometimes I just don't want to do any detail at all. And it both feel good as an artist to do. Both feel rewarding. Sometimes a painting or reference just looks better as a painterly reproduction. And sometimes some references are just such crappy references. You really need to throw on some detail because the photo in itself, the actual reference photo, wasn't that great a shot, but you picked it, you studied it, and you went with it. And now you have all this mileage, which is good. So I'm going to do something in between these two wheelbarrows, okay? um, the first thing we do is we start off with the focal point of the focal point. The focal point of the focal point. So this is already a focal point, but the focal point of the focal point is the lash line and the eyes. These two here are the killers right here. This is what really carries this read. It also depends on how zoomed out you are. If you're zoomed out and you're drawing a portrait and a bust and all of that, you don't need to draw every little lash. But if the whole painting is an eyeball, yes, you're gonna have to draw every single lash. So it's relative. It's not always going to be the same rules you see today. It's not always gonna be this kind of referencing. Not everything I say today will be applicable to different kinds of canvases. It's on a case by case basis. But based off this case, we need a lot of detail. But if this face was zoomed out and we had a bust and this was just one of the eyes, we wouldn't need that much more detail. I really want to spend time making that distinction. If it's a bust, it's very different than a zoomed up close-up shot of an eye. Very, very different levels of detailing. So the detailing I'm teaching today is about the close-up. We really need to see more for it to work. And so what I'm going to be doing is starting off with the lashes, but I'm going to make my own lashes. That's the difference between the two wheelbarrows, okay? The first farmer would be like, no, I need to copy like every single freaking lash. I need to make sure everything is perfect. The first farmer would copy 1-to-1 pixels, but the second farmer would not do that. They would just kind of make up their own lashes, detail some of them, blur others. That's kind of what I'm going to do more of today. But, a big but, like last class, it's still going to be detailing. Remember, zoom out, find the context of what you're talking about, and then zoom back in. We're still talking about detailing, so it's still going to look detailed. So this is what I'm doing. I'm starting with the lashes, and I'm adding a couple lashes of my own, guided by the reference, but not restricted by the reference. Then I'm going to draw a couple of lashes kind of crossing inward to each other. Lashes are messy. Nature itself is messy. When nature adds feathers, fur, hair, grass, leaves, nature's like, it's a general idea. She's not like, I need to make sure everything is factored into the right spot and make sure. No, that's on the atomic level. On the atomic level, nature's very strict. Nature doesn't fuck around on the atomic level. But on the surface level, on the non-quantum level, just out here in the world, nature's like, whatever. It doesn't have to be all the same size grass. It doesn't have to be all the same size hairs. It doesn't even have to be the same color of skin all the way around the human body. There's different shades in it. You see what I'm saying? So all I'm doing right now is I'm adding the lash line. But I'm noticing the lash line is looking a lot more detailed than the iris. I'm not going to do any more work on the iris. This is just about adding detail, not adjusting the base shape. So what I do is I get blur tool. I blur and I smudge. I smudge sometimes on my big smudger, but I'm smudging away the lashes I just added. Let me give you a quick little tour of the world of illusions, okay? The illusion world where mirrors are just like, weird, and there's a melted clock, and everything is weird in this world of illusions. And this is being an artist. Big emphasis on the screaming face though. So this world of illusions, our viewer is walking through it. And they think they're seeing everything as perfectly realistic. They have no idea. They're walking through the world of illusions. We've taken them on a ride. The most fundamental of the illusions is that they're seeing 3 dimensions when really there was just 2. But they're seeing like buildings and faces and structures and 3 dimensions. But really we tricked them. It's actually just a 2D drawing. There isn't a 3rd dimension in our drawings. That was the first illusion. That was the first time we tricked our viewer. The second time would be the textures. Okay, textures aren't really doing what they do in a real life or a photo in our images. The second illusion is texture. So the first one is form. The second illusion is texture. I'll talk about the third one because I already forgot it. The second one is texture, meaning that texture needs to be not actual texture, but an illusion of the texture. It's not really there. So when we think about fur, we don't want to draw every single little fuzz. We're drawing the general idea of it, the general presence of it. So this second illusion is going to be you mimicking, creating a mirage in the desert. You're creating this mirage in all the dunes, and the viewer is just like traveling through the desert, and they're seeing this mirage, but it's not real. This is not real texture. This is what the texture looks like from the point of view of a mortal being. Okay? The third illusion is that we are seeing things with the naked eye. We're not seeing things as if we're seeing them the way a camera sees them. So a camera can see all the pixels all at the same time and take a picture of all the pixels and recreate it into a photograph. However, the human eyeball looks at a canvas or looks at anything in the world, dunes or buildings or anything like that. It looks at one thing at a time and only one thing at a time. And if it tries to look at 2 different things at 2 different times because you have 2 eyes, they overlap. they spread apart. I forget what that's called in optometry. So that's the third illusion, is that the way detail is perceived, which is, I guess we can say, perception, or focal perception. Let's call it focal perception. So we are painting as if the viewer is only seeing the iris and everything else is periphery vision. You should always paint like that. Don't paint like a photo in a camera, because the camera sees everything. You paint like that, like those photorealists paint. It's like, what's the point? Like, I have full respect to photorealists. It's a lot of effort. But what's the point? Like, I want to see what you think you're seeing. I don't want to see what I'm seeing. I'm already seeing the photograph. I want to see what you think you're seeing. Like, that's why Impressionism was such a gigantic, explosive thing that happened in art in general, because artists started emerging that didn't care about representational anymore. They don't want realism. They want to show what's in their mind. And suddenly the human psyche was a subject of study. And the human psyche is right there to be dissected. You know, if an artist paints a piece of work, it's right there. The human psyche and artists is like hand in hand. So those are the illusions. There's probably more, but those are the illusions. You are an illusionist. You're a magician. And so when I'm adding detail, I don't want to leave these lashes just like that. I want to leave them as if they are being seen by the edge of my eye, not by my actual eye. Right? My actual eye is seeing, my focus is on the iris. That's what's going to be the sharpest. So I am smudging and detailing, smudging and detailing until I get a fuzzy, general, elusive presence of hair in this area that I needed for sure. Look at that, before, after. But it's not eating up the scene. It's not pretending to be the focal point. It hasn't interrupted or dismantled the illusion. Deal, everybody? I don't know why I sounded so high. Deal, everybody? All right. The next lash line can be pretty complex to detail, because you're like, I'm adding detail, but the eye suddenly looks a little bit like goth makeup. It looks darker than I intended. So what you can do is do the opposite, which is like another illusion, painting by the negatives. You get the white of the lash line, sorry, you get the white of the eyelid and you brush upward. Do you see that? That creates a general presence of the lashes, but it's not new paint that you had to bring in. All right, and then it's going to leave behind a bit of a mess, obviously. We're going to go back and blend and take care of that mess. And if you want, you can bring in a little extra paint for the tails of some of those. Obviously, we're going to blend and detail and blend and detail this area until we've exhausted our limit based off that texture. That focal perception limit, meaning we can't do too much before we leave the focal point rules. Okay, just like that. So you've seen me detail just like this around the eyebrows. We grab the skin and we drag down to create the space between the hair. All texture is illusion, all of it. Any texture you paint in your paintings is an illusion. You just have to practice that magic trick a couple of times in a separate canvas where you're just practicing. Then there is the shade of each lash. So sometimes lashes catch the light. Excuse me. So I'm just using any nearby midtone on low opacity, and I'm just showing the three-dimensional side view of every lash. Don't do this if it's not a close-up eye, because if we don't really need it, we're not going to be that close enough to be able to see any of this. It's just, it would look weird if we over detail something. It doesn't even need to be that detailed. There's only so much you need before the resolution clicks. Okay. And then there's just like a little bit of that water right here. You can add a little bit of that water hanging out in between the layers. of the skin. And I'm just showing a bit more of the waterline. Now for the eyebrows. The eyebrows, I'm just using my pencil brush. It's in my sketching set, just like this. It's just a standard detailing brush I use. But for eyebrows, I'd like to detail with my blocker, just so it can get me started on those clumps of hair. And so I just, again, I'm doing my own thing. I'm the second wheelbarrow man. I'm doing my own thing. I'm not really worried about whether or not the reference is being copied perfectly. But I know the anatomy of an eyebrow. The anatomy of an eyebrow, it has the main shape. All hairs grow down, all bottom hairs grow up, top hairs grow down, bottom hairs grow up, and then they all meet together at the tail, and the starting ones are kind of wispy. They're kind of doing their own thing. This isn't just the direction. This is the direction your brush is moving in as well. So don't forget that. So that's what I'm doing. I don't need to look at the reference to know how eyebrows work. Oh, you know, not all eyebrows do this, but most of them, enough to get you, you know, paid for your book cover. And then I'm just letting them all meet at the middle somewhere. And where they meet in the middle spine is where they're darkest, because all the hairs are hanging out there. So now we have all this extra detail. You can over detail the eyebrows and blend away later. Don't let that tail of the eyebrow get too blurry or too sharp. Just something in between, something that looks like periphery vision. Using the negatives to paint down until I get the feeling that, hey, there's hair there. I know it's there, but it's not really there. This is some kind of illusion, you know? Just like that. And I love that moment when my students realize this. I love when I tell them, no, you weren't supposed to paint the texture. You're supposed to trick your audience into thinking they're seeing that texture. And they have this little glimmer in their eyes, like, what? Like, I'm allowed? They're like, yeah, you're allowed. Okay, and then now I'm not going to use the negatives. I'm just going to leave behind a couple extra little brush strokes. And when you over provide detail, it's easy because then you blend away what you don't need. You're left with a finished piece. And so we have different types of smudge for eyebrows. You can do a scatter smudge. You can do a drag smudge. I like the drag smudge sometimes because if you have hair and you're just dragging the hair and the way the hair grows, it's just perfect. Look at that. It just completely kept my grain intact while also dragging. This is just an experimental brush I own that I made. You don't have to do it this way. You can drag with just one brush. Like, take a look at this soft brush on smudge brush, and it can just drag every single one of my brush strokes out of that detail, excessive detail, and I can just bring things back to an acceptable point. Or you can go to scatter smudge. All these brushes are on my store, and lower that strength all the way down because scatter on Photoshop is crazy for some reason. And you just brush that brush over, or do a combination like I'm just doing. And when my brush is this big, I just zoom out. And the most important thing, okay, everybody pay attention. Everybody just get close. If you want hair to look natural from where it grows to where it ends, blur the edges. Okay? Like, smudge the edge a little bit. Don't just let a hair like grow out of something, or in fact it's anything, any kind of brush stroke you apply anywhere, even if it's a block. Clean up the root of the brush stroke. Okay, clean up the root of the brush stroke, meaning not clean up as in make it sharper, clean up as in get rid of the sharpness, which can look pretty dirty. This is rendering. This is half of rendering right here. Getting rid of the starting grain of a brush stroke. Okay, that really goes a long way. So sometimes you can sit there trying to blend when all you had to do was just blur the root. So most of these brush strokes I'm adding are just getting their root blurred. All right, so a lot of detail has been added with very little effort, no major shrinking of our brush, and no hours and hours. For some reason, you guys think detailing is hours of work. No, no. Get rid of that thought, because that's what the photorealists have done to the way people think about detail. The photorealists, yes, they're there for hours, but we're not trying to hit those levels of accuracy, because we want to be expressive. And I don't feel, I feel like, yes, photorealists can be expressive in the subject matter they choose, yeah, for sure, but I don't feel like they're expressive with technique. I think all their technique is lost in the detail, because there is no technique. The technique is just don't let any grains of sand fall out of the wheelbarrow. You know what I mean? So just I kind of lost my point over here. You track back, rewind, and try to find my point. I'm sorry, I lost it. I don't know where I dropped it. So right now, all I'm doing is I'm just adding a little bit more contrast. Not so worried about where everything is sitting. I'm actually gonna just go ahead and blur down. I mean, blend down, merge down, and I'm going to get my brush, my smudge brush. I mean, you could put it on 1% if you want. And I'm going to brush it over the whole eyebrow. I don't want the eyebrow to feel like it's the point of this zoom up. I want only some of the eyebrow hairs to stand out as part of the detail line of sight. So this eyebrow hair here, reduce my opacity. You didn't have to smudge. Like, this is the eyebrow before I smudged. This is the eyebrow after. I like to smudge it, maybe like up to this much. So this is before, this is after. I like to be a bit more picky. I don't want to feel like I can see the illusion. I don't want to see behind the curtain. Do you know what I'm saying? It's hard to describe what I'm doing, but smudging the eyebrows while still keeping detail visible is a balancing act and a magic trick. Another trick is wherever the light travels on the face, that's where we get more detail. So the light is sitting here in this general zone on the eyebrow bone cheek area. Okay? So, excuse me. So right here, there's a lot of highlight here. So we're going to see a little bit more sharpness to things. So we're just going to see a bit more cutting edges. We're going to see a slightly sharper lash line, or a sharper lash among the other lashes. We're going to see one or two lashes on the bottom row kind of just doing their own thing, but only along this line, because again, this is with the human eye. The naked human eye is how we're painting. We're not painting as if it's being seen through a camera. We want only some things to be visible. And that's pretty much it. That's how, for lack of a better term, insignificant detailing is. But at the same time, if you say that to a student, like, whoa, no, because look at the difference. This is great. I like detailing. I can't wait to detail. And then they rush their way to detailing, skipping their block. Do you see what I'm saying? So students really like the stage because it's the fun stage where you do the last couple little highlights, and it's really satisfying. But it's not possible without all the layers underneath, which is why I say, in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to theory, knowledge, application, the amount of tasks you have to do, blocking and the rendering and tracking the light and mapping the light and all of that, and keeping likeness, measuring, those are way more significant and the significant thing about painting. And that's why this lesson feels so short, because that's it. That's it. You just, those are the main rules. Detail, blur, detail, blur. Keep an eye out for your focal point. Don't do anything crazy. Don't start the painting over again, but with a small brush. Don't go over all your edges that you've worked hard to establish because now you get to use a small brush, so you're back to old habits. No, slow down and only add detail where we need it. Now I'm just going to boost this specular highlight right here. Okay, and I'm just going to add my own twist to it. Just boosting that. Sometimes the lower lash line, the upper water line. Yes, there's a water line at the top. That might catch light. You might be able to see that. It's not in the reference, but you might be able to see it. And when we're talking about like zoom up, so let me show you where that upper water line might be. It's like a line that's white that sits right under the lash line. It's really sneaky. Sometimes it's just right there. See that? When you're really zoomed up into the eyes, sometimes you have the picture of the room reflected there in the person's eyes. Like it's literally just reflected there. So I'm on a new layer. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, really blur that. Reduce opacity to almost like not even present. And it's with soft brush, and I'm just going to delete at the picture until I feel like I have like this okay pattern for the room around the face. It could be the most random arrangement. It's not necessarily specular highlights of the water. It's just this little mirror reflection of the room around. Sometimes it's a sharp picture. Sometimes you can straight up see the grills of the window that the person is near. Like you can just straight up see the lines of the window, the lines of the room. But look out for that in your references. And if you don't have a reference, okay. And if there's like an eye, you know, like an eyeball, and the sky is blue, sometimes we will see a full-on blue beam. That is not the specular highlight, just sitting over the eye with the exact same color as the sky. It's literally 1-to-1, but obviously lower opacity. Remember, the eyes are mirrors. They're reflecting everything. They can see it all. They can reflect it all. What it can see, it can reflect. And that's really it. There's not much else. I'm trying to think of other tricks I use. There is pores, yes, and freckles. Those are just really, really kind of standard. But the way to add them is very tricky. Rarely do you need them. But if you like pores, freckles, you can add those. That's pigmentation. But freckles are like they do more damage than you need. But if you really have to, go over an area with 2 tones, the darkest tone that you have in the area. So okay, so I picked this. I added the darkest tone I have, and then I'm going to get white and use the lightest tone over the skin. So now I have 2 tones. Some are catching the light, some are not. And this layer, I'm going to delete away at it until I have some of it left over to catch the light a little bit and give us this slight skin texture, you know, that bumpy skin texture. So remember, it's 2 tones, black and white. I'm going to do the same thing up here. First layer, second layer, and it's not what we're seeing in the reference at all, but it borrows from the same concept. And you can do it on all the areas that have light, on all of the skin of the eye, black and white layered on top of each other, deleting where you don't need it. And wherever there is highlight, like really present light, you can add a lot more of the white speckle because that will catch the light. Okay, and then again, just deleting. You might want to do it in layers because then you're just deleting the layer underneath and you don't want to do that. Anywhere where there's highlight, I add those speckles. It's barely present, but it's there. The skin feels like it's there. As for wrinkles, wrinkles are really easy. They're just a long, really slim cylinder. So I could add a wrinkle to the most random spot right now. I grab the local value, the local shadow. Okay. I add one long brush stroke. And I make sure it's got like a more of a fabric type of darkness that's radial. And then I follow it up with a light brush stroke that sits on top of it. And then I blend wherever that cylinder connects. So I connect those two together. I leave some areas sharp to show the layering. I blur the end. Remember that trick? Blur the ends. And then I add a little highlight line. Now we have another wrinkle. And you just do this as many times as you want. You can have more than one on top of each other, and they start to really add up. So let's take a look at this before and after. Oops, 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 oops. Okay. So before, oh shit. No, God. No, God, no, God. Okay. Ooh, I forgot to, I don't know why, because I pasted. How did it keep the history? I don't know. Is it a miracle? I don't know. It's a miracle. Before, after. We have more detail, but we didn't have to disrupt anything underneath. We didn't have to repaint the blocks. We worked with what we had, and everything is an illusion. It's all a lie. All right, I'm just gonna take whatever that is out of the way. Okay, so before, after, before, after. And I feel like that's what was missing in this piece. Just a little bit more detail was needed. I would detail the iris as well. Just throw that in there. Throw it in there. That's it for today. That's really it. I don't have much else to add. Detailing is not as hard as you guys think. It doesn't take as long as you guys think. It's actually really straightforward and very easy compared to contrast and blocking and measuring and all that madness that is rendering, which is also easy, by the way. I'm not trying to discourage you from learning how to render. I'm just all over the place today. I'm just all over the place today. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys are interested in learning more about how to paint portraits, I do have a masterclass and it's on sale. If you guys want to go check it out on Istebrak.com, the link for my Gumroad is right there. If you guys want to support me on Patreon, you can. There is the apprentice group where I give out homework. I do all kinds of stuff. I do a lot. I'm all over the place. If you want to submit your work for critique, today's piece I found in the subreddit community. That's where I found this piece today. I love what you guys do. I love having an opportunity to create an educational experience through your work. So the more you guys submit, the more variety I cover in class. And go to Instagram and give your girl a follow. I'm trying hard to climb back up. And that's it. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys next class, which is Tuesday, the 26th at 5 p.m. Eastern. I obviously will not be able to attend on the 28th. It's Thanksgiving Day, United States. But then a week after that, we will be going right back to business. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.